It's your girl Asha and I am back with another video, and today I'm going to be learning a little bit more about European football. I had so much fun watching the finals. It was intense, it was lit, it was a lot of back and forth. It was far from boring. I do not watch other sports such as football in the States. I don't watch basketball. The only thing that I know about basketball is when it comes to sneakers. Outside of that, I don't watch anything besides boxing and UFC. So I'm definitely a fan of European football. It was definitely lit. And if you guys would like to check out my other videos, the link will be up at the top. If you guys would like to join my Patreon or follow me on Instagram, the link will be down in the description below. And if you haven't subscribed already, what are you waiting for? Hit that red button so you can be a part of the family. Don't forget to give your girl a thumbs up. Enough of me talking. Let's get straight into this reaction. I hate watching soccer. They have to bring the stretcher at least 6 times
Well, I've
a
been wanting to
game.
start following soccer for a while now, but as an American, I always found it complicated. Not like how they play. Most 3-year-olds can kind of
That means that
understand
they
more or less how it
play
works.
it.
I just mean how everything kind of works in Europe.
Kick the goal.
I would follow the World Cup, and I'd root for the United States if they made it, and then I'd root for Iceland because clearly they've all been practicing that clapping and they're really good at it. But that only happens once every 4 years. So I turn on my TV, and it would be like a random game, like Parma versus Bologna. And first I'd make sure that I wasn't watching the Food Network, but then I had no frame of reference for this game. Like, are these teams good? Is this a big game? Which one of these guys is Pele? I didn't know. And I had all these other questions, like, why are teams getting kicked out of leagues? Why are they all rolling around on the ground so much? How are guys getting traded to different countries?
Singing about
Why does everybody in the stands have a scarf? So a few months ago, I tried to start figuring it all out, and I started watching some matches. That's the first thing. They aren't soccer games. They are football matches. And I bought FIFA for my Xbox, and I bought a scarf and a vuvuzela because that's like the rules or something. So anyway, this is all the info that I wish I'd known a year ago. This is my crash course of translating soccer into American. I'm going to assume that you kind of know the rules. The biggest difference between American sports is how offsides works and the clock. Lots of people get upset about the clock. It goes up instead of down. Get over yourself.
I was a little bit confused about the clock. I really didn't understand it because I realized that it wasn't going down, it was going up. So I really did not I didn't understand that. So I guess he's going to explain it.
Doesn't really matter. Americans also get mad because the clock doesn't stop and games pretty much end whenever the ref feels like it. And you actually adjust to this pretty quickly. The game's an hour and a half long. You'll have your chances to score, and if you can't score, then it's not the clock's fault. Some people, and when I say people, I'm referring both to discussions I've had with other Americans as well as like myself 6 years ago. So people think soccer is too slow.
What?
And when Americans look at a soccer field...
Absolutely not. Which sport? Football is definitely not slow. Now, football in the States is extremely slow. I feel like those games be going on for like 10 hours. I know it's not me. Like, and I don't even watch football in the States, but if you call somebody and they be like, oh, I'm watching football, and then like 8 hours later you be like, oh, what you watching or what you doing? I'm still watching football. Football in the States is extremely long and slow and boring.
Something in our minds, we think that it's like playing hockey or playing basketball just on a big grass field. And in those sports, guys like go full tilt a lot, like most of the game. So when two players are just standing there passing the ball back and forth, we wonder, like, why aren't they trying to move forward? Just go. And on the other side, we expect the defenders to be attacking the guy with the ball rather than just standing 5 feet back and letting him do what he's doing.
But they can't, because if they always attack, they can possibly end up getting like fouled and stuff like that, right? I know that you can't like physically touch the players, so you can't really be too aggressive, because then you can end up, what is it called? I think the opposite team can end up getting the ball if you're too aggressive trying to take the ball, right?
The key difference is that football pitches are much larger than basketball courts and hockey rinks.
Yeah,
And if you
it looks
tried a
like
full
it.
court press for the whole soccer game, you would be exhausted and you would probably lose. See, the pace of a soccer game is actually much closer to baseball. Most of the game is going to consist of guys just slowly passing the ball around, real peaceful, and then it's going to be all of a sudden followed by these short bursts of extremely fast action. Basketball players, it's estimated, run an average of 2.5 miles during a game. Soccer players can run 7, if not 10 miles during one game. And remember, you only have 3 subs games, so most of these players will be playing the whole game.
So 3 subs, meaning that you can trade out players, right? And the fact that soccer players run so much, the amount of stamina that you have to run up and down the field is on a whole nother like level.
One thing Americans will appreciate is that other than halftime, there are no commercials. So it's like the anti
I
NFL,
noticed
which is
that
great.
too.
It also means that no matter where the ball is, both teams are always potentially about 30 seconds away from scoring, which creates this kind of constant tension. It also creates a scenario where you can't ever really run to the bathroom or get a drink. Soccer players seem to have a reputation for being lazy in the U.S. because they don't always pop right back up after going to ground and get right back into play.
What? Excuse me? How? How are they considered lazy when they run up and down the field? So, I mean, if they have like a little incident, can you really blame them? Are you really serious?
Certainly, some players do embellish things and some go over the top, but I don't really think that
Yeah,
on the whole it's quite the issue that
Italy was going over the top. My opinion.
people make it out to be. So they get made fun of in Europe too. So here's a fun experiment to try the next time you have a few minutes. Go to like a local field and then quickly jog laps around that field for like 10 minutes. And then suddenly sprint down the middle of the field as fast as you can. And when you're halfway up the field, while you're still sprinting, have one of your friends just shove you over onto the ground. And if
Yeah,
you can
that's
pop right back up and keep sprinting, then you can keep complaining about those guys. A lot of the time, they're just taking a little rest. And everyone will either just keep playing around them or both teams will be a little tired, so who cares? It's not a Matthew Riley novel out there. The other reason for guys slowly passing the ball around is that one of the
strategy.
strategies currently employed by most teams is to maintain possession as much as possible. Obviously, this is no different in American football or why Russia is really good at hockey.
And that's what England was doing with Denmark. They kept that ball, baby. They definitely kept that ball. And Denmark, I mean, they tried, but I don't know. They really wasn't good. They wasn't really that good with their defense, Denmark.
The other team can't score when you have the ball. So teams will just pass the ball back and forth and even pass it back to their own goalie because it's better to go backwards with the ball than to maybe make a risky pass and let the other team have the ball. On
Oh.
occasion, you'll see a team make like 50 passes without the other team touching the ball, which can take a really long time, but then they'll go down and
Yeah.
they'll score, and that's like as good as it gets.
That's
It's
kind
all
of
about
like
waiting for the
that was kind of like the back and forth that was going on between England and Italy.
precise moment for things to align and then all going together at the right moment. In terms of like positioning and formations, you'll usually have 3 or 4 numbers, like 4-4-2 or 4-3-3 or 4-2-3-1. These numbers will always add up to 10, and then the goalie is just assumed. Different positions include the center backs, who just stay as defenders, and then the full backs are both the left and the right back, who will defend, but then they'll also usually join the attack as well. And then we have midfielders, like a center midfielder, who can go both ways, a center attacking midfielder or a center defending midfielder. And then up front, we have like a left wing and a right wing, sometimes a center forward.
So the left back and the center back and the right back are usually the players that usually makes the goal the most, right? I believe so. I think so. It seems like it by looking at the screen.
and a striker up front it's his job to just score goals. One thing I'll mention that makes it easy to kind of get into soccer is that you can legally watch some old matches on YouTube. This is unlike American sports. Like, why isn't there a website that I can go to watch any game, like an iTunes for sports? It's like I can pay $2 to watch any game in history. Like, all these games are on tape somewhere. They exist. But I can't watch a game in the 1986 World Series unless an international pandemic shuts down the world and there's no sports. And they just happen to put it on NBC or something. Like, come on.
Wow.
So anyway,
Okay.
So keeping the ball and attacking is referred to as positive football. You're always trying to move forward. This is what most teams do. This is what people like to watch a little more. It's kind of exciting. It's more exciting to watch that way.
I like the take the ball, pass the ball, get the ball. I like that. Very intense. I love it. It's very exciting. It's very exciting to watch that. I like that.
But of course, there's always a yin to the yang. So the yin is this guy named Jose Mourinho. And he basically says, I don't want the ball. I'm going to stand back with my players in front of my goal, and you're not going to score. And then every once in a while, when you're falling asleep and all your players are up in my zone, we're going to steal the ball and we're going to run down and score.
Oh, okay. Now I get it. Because I remember that someone was saying that, I think someone was saying when Italy versus England was going on, someone was saying Italy is going to let England keep the ball. It's going to let England keep the ball and let them tire themselves out. And then in the second half, that's when they're going to attack. So that was Italy's strategy. Comment down below and let me know if you believe that was their strategy. That's kind of like with boxing in a way. That's kind of like, for example, with Floyd Mayweather. Floyd Mayweather is going to let you tire yourself out. He's going to let you run around. Oh, well, no. Yeah. For example, he's going to let you run around and stuff like that. No, he's going to run around and you're going to tire yourself out the first couple of rounds. Maybe from the first and fifth round, you're going to tire yourself out chasing him. Okay? Chasing him. And by the time it's from the fifth to the sixth, you tired, bro. You tired. Comment down below. Let me know if that was Italy's strategy, because someone said it and it does make sense that they did do that. I think, I was a little bit drunk, but I think so. I think that the second half they was more aggressive in the second half compared to the first half.
Which sounds a little bit risky, except that it actually does work if you do it well. Jose's considered one of the best managers there is, and he has the trophies to back it up.
I don't know who he is,
plenty of big tournaments with teams.
It's a great strategy.
And I'm told if you tried to have that team keep the ball the whole time, like most coaches would, they would have been destroyed. They were too old, and they just would have got worn out and wiped out. But by playing this negative defensive strategy, they were able to win. And despite this, teams that employ the strategy seem to get a bad rap for playing negative as opposed to positive football, because keeping the ball seems to be the in thing right now. So obviously there's more thought that goes into it than I've described here. Like Diego Simeone and Atletico Madrid has been using this negative strategy for years, and they've been successful with it. On the flip side, the guys who've risen to the top playing possession football are also widely sought after. Two of the most well-known coaches right now are Jurgen Klopp and Pep Guardiola. And I highly recommend watching the series All or Nothing about Manchester City on Amazon Prime. It's about Guardiola's team a few years ago. And it's quite clear from interviews with these guys that they're quite thoughtful and well-traveled. I couldn't name a single baseball manager who can speak 3 languages. So speaking of Manchester City, they play in England. There are 4 main football countries in Europe. There's England, Spain, Germany, and Italy. England has the Premier League, Spain has La Liga, Germany has the Bundesliga, and Italy has Serie A. So to take one country, they're all the same, but to take one country, England, the Premier League consists of 20 teams. Every team plays every other team, once at home and once away. And these leagues don't have playoffs. You get 3 points for a win, 1 for a tie. The team with the most points at the end of the season wins.
Oh.
And this can and has come down to the final day of the season before. In the U.S., our leagues pretty much have the same teams every year. So if you suck, and even if you start to lose on purpose, you actually get rewarded with the top draft pick the next year. If you finish in last place in one of these leagues, they literally kick you out of the league. But
Oh.
they call it relegation because that's a nicer sounding word. Before we keep going, here's a quick aside on the MLS. Major League Soccer is the top league in the United States. It's different in many ways than the European leagues. There's no relegation, so the teams do stay the same from year to year, and there is a salary cap. Talent-wise, I guess globally speaking, it seems to be an okay league, but certainly not on par with any of the European leagues. So under the Premier League, which is at the top, under them is a league called the English Football League Championship. The 3 teams who finish at the bottom of the Premier League are relegated to the Championship for the next season and replaced by 3 teams from the Championship. The bottom 3 teams in the Championship are relegated to League One. The bottom 3 in League One are relegated to League Two, whose losers go to the National League, whose losers are nobody really cares about them except their moms at this part, but you get the idea. Unless you really get into soccer, you'll never hear about anything below the Premier League again.
Oh,
But
wow.
just so you're aware of what's happening down there. This system does a few things. First off, just because you're near the bottom of the standings, your games can still be extremely important. They still count because you're not trying to win the league anymore, but now you're trying to literally stay in the league. And the higher the league you're in, the higher the check you get from TV contracts. So it's kind of a big deal. It also creates this kind of theoretical meritocracy where you could start a team with a bunch of guys anywhere in the country, get into a kind of a tiny league, and then ultimately work your way up to the Premier League. In
Really?
reality, that'd be like trying to take a single A baseball team and work your way up to the majors, while the other better teams with bigger pocketbooks are trying to buy all your best players the whole way. But for the teams at the top, just winning the Premier League sounds pretty easy. You're playing maybe one game a week. But that's the catch. There's other things going on here. So there's also the Carabao Cup, which is a tournament open to the top 4 leagues
League Cup.
in England. And then there's the FA Cup, which has been going on since like forever, that it's literally open to every like team in England. So over 700 teams entered this one tournament last year. Like imagine if every major and minor league baseball team had one giant tournament. So could any team win? Yes, they could. Will the
700?
small teams upset the bigger teams?
That's a
At some point, maybe a few will. But is it likely that a non-Premier League team is going to win? No, probably not. So more fun to think about in theory than practically, I guess. The final tournament is the big one. Like, what if we could find the best team in Europe? And I don't mean like each country gets a team. That's the European Championship that happens every 4 years. This, I'm talking about the league clubs. So the best teams from all over Europe, from 55 different countries, battle it out each year. This is the UEFA Champions League. So as a side note on these acronyms here, FIFA is the organization that runs like big international tournaments like the World Cup, and they help to coordinate things across different regions. If you're an American, you probably heard of FIFA because somebody on SportsCenter mentioned somebody that was involved with some kind of corruption investigation or something. Anyway, within FIFA, the world is divided into 6 different regions. UEFA is Europe, that's where like the best players go. CONCACAF, you may have heard of because that's what the U.S. is in, the Confederation of North, Central American, and
No.
Caribbean Association Football, which is short and sweet. And then there's like the rest of the world. And each one of these groups has tournaments with national teams and their league clubs, like the CONCACAF Champions League and the UEFA Champions League. And these are called like the Champions League, but really it's just a tournament. So the
This is
UEFA
so
Champions
interesting.
League is played in conjunction with the UEFA Europa League, which is kind of like the NCAA and NIT basketball tournaments, but with a bit of a twist. They play the qualifying rounds for the Champions League first. So if you get knocked out of the big boy tournament, but you finish high enough, you can just move down into the Europa League and try to win that. And I won't get into the qualifying, but typically you're going to have teams that you may have heard of as an American, like Manchester City, Liverpool.
This is amazing. I did not know that there were like different levels when it came to the league at all. I just thought it was just football was football, game. I didn't know they had over 700 leagues, different tiers. I didn't know any of this. Wow.
Liverpool, Manchester United, Tottenham Hotspur. From Spain, they'd probably be Barcelona and Atletico Madrid and Real Madrid. Serie A from Italy, we'll have Juventus
It's
and Inter and
definitely,
Roma and
football is
Atalanta.
definitely a big thing.
Germany is pretty much dominated by Borussia Dortmund and Bayern Munich. And then there's other popular teams like Paris Saint-Germain from France and Lyon from France and Ajax from the Netherlands. And then you throw in a few Russian teams and you're ready to party. So back to the Premier League. You remember how your team's playing that kind of standard 38 game schedule. So now, also at the same time, you're competing in the Premier League, the Carabao Cup, the FA Cup, and the Champions League. And there's like a bunch of other small one-off games happening too. So even if you have the best team, you're still probably not going to win all these tournaments just because of the wear and tear.
Yeah.
If you can win 3 trophies in a year, that's like special. That's called a treble. If you win 4, that's called a quadruple, but that's pretty rare. And so the biggest payday is for winning your league, although I, for some reason, find the Champions League is hard to beat for excitement. So even though you can, soccer teams tend to trade players less than they do in the U.S. Rather, teams will just buy players from their current club. So a contract is going to include your salary, obviously, but also something called a release clause, which is a fee that would go to the current club for that player. So while any team could negotiate a transfer fee with a player's current club, a release clause takes that current team just out of negotiations altogether. So a baseball player, unhappy with the situation, he could demand a trade, and they might trade him and he'd be happy. But if they refuse to trade him, then he's kind of stuck. Whereas a soccer player could just find another team willing to pay that release clause. And once a team agrees to pay the clause, then they can just negotiate directly with that player.
It's kind of like buying.
Obviously, the better player, the higher the fee is going to
guess.
be, so the current club can go out and find a reasonable replacement. Another big difference is that while most sports in the U.S. have a trade deadline, and that's followed by a few weeks afterward where players cannot move to another team, soccer's kind of the opposite. So most of the time, you cannot move to another team. There are 2 periods a year called transfer windows that you can move during. So usually before and then halfway through the season. And you could sign a new contract for another team whenever, but you can't actually start playing for them until that next transfer window. And the last thing in terms,
I'm definitely going to be watching football next season, okay?
of contracts is that in the U.S., most leagues have a draft, but soccer's pretty much like the Wild West. So teams will sign players, or I should say kids, like into their youth academy very young, like 10, 8 years old. And smaller teams who find a really good player could also include something called a sell-on clause when selling a player to a larger team that says if the team buying that player turns around and sells the player again to an even bigger club, then that original team will get a percentage of that secondary sale. All right, so if you're still here at this point, you probably want more. So what's next?
Yes.
There are like an unlimited number of top or best goal compilations on YouTube, which are kind of interesting in the sense that you can actually show, new people to soccer, the potential that the game has. Lots of Americans' exposure to soccer is like the Women's World Cup, and obviously we have a great team there, but you never really get to see what different strategies look like. Like look up Barcelona tiki-taka videos. You won't regret that. They make grown men look like children. As I mentioned, the All or Nothing series on Man City is great if you have Amazon Prime. And obviously just watching games is good. FIFA TV has a YouTube channel that has lots of international matches. Or just look on YouTube for full football matches. You're smart, you'll find them. UEFA TV has old Champions League matches. I think you might have to register, but it's free. You probably want to follow BR's football channel on YouTube. They have a lot of good stuff, including this very funny series called The Champions, which I'd probably wait a little bit until you learn a little more about the top players before watching that. One place I always turn to when trying to learn a new sport is video games. So FIFA would probably help. Although the big caveat there is that it has horrible reviews. That said, if you're just trying to learn the rules, like basic tactics and which players are on which teams and who plays where, I would say it's been pretty helpful for me. Most of the negativity toward the game is for the online, the FIFA Ultimate Team mode, where you end up paying for players for your team. But if you just avoid that and then stick to playing against the AI, then you should be okay. The only thing I hesitate to do is play as Barcelona because you could control Leo Messi, and like, who am I to tell God what to do? So I usually avoid that part. The alternative here, it would be a game called Pez, which I've heard good things about, although it doesn't have licensing for many of the teams. So jerseys will look different and team names will be slightly off, which I guess might be confusing to someone new. And I think FIFA's player faces are a bit more recognizable too. News-wise, there's coverage like everywhere of soccer, although I do enjoy the site onefootball.com, which brings us to the sponsor of today's video, which is, there's no sponsor for today's video.
He didn't really talk about, I thought he was going to talk about the penalties and stuff like that. I think there's other videos regarding the penalties that explain that, but I definitely did get a better understanding about the clock, about the positions in football and stuff like that. Comment down below. Let me know what you guys think. I am going to check out some of the channels and videos he recommended. I'm going to check them out, and I also want to check out, like, you know, like the penalties and fouls and stuff like that. Comment down below. Let me know what you guys think. Don't forget to give your girl a thumbs up, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye, fam.